Commissioner for a day, actually two, Dennis White is now officially out at the Boston Police Department.
It is clear that Dennis White's return as commissioner would send a chilling message to victims of domestic violence in our city and reinforce a culture of fear and a blue wall of silence in our police department. Dennis White's documented conduct 20 years ago and during the course of the investigation led me to the inescapable conclusion that it is not in the best interest of the Boston Police Department, its employees, or the citizens of Boston for him to remain as commissioner.
It's the latest step in a saga that started almost immediately after he was appointed to the top job in January by Mayor Walsh, when the Boston Globe released a report about domestic violence allegations White's ex-wife made against him in the 90s. He was quickly suspended, and last month, acting Mayor Kim Janey started taking steps to fire him. And though White has repeatedly denied most of the claims, corroborated by one daughter but not the other, Janey said today his actions in recent weeks have done even more to erode public trust in his judgment.
It is a new day. We have a new vision for policing in Boston. We have to reimagine policing. We have to make sure that there is accountability and transparency.
This is just one in a series of recent scandals for the BPD, including over what, who knew what, and when about the child molestation allegations against former officer and police union president Patrick Rose, at least one of which, the Boston Globe reported, had been internally investigated by the department decades before his arrest and criminal indictment earlier this year. And now there's another one, with at least 14 members of the BPD, including officers and other employees, now the target of a criminal investigation into 5 years and more than $300,000 worth of overtime fraud schemes. The Boston Globe called it ludicrously brazen, detailing accusations from prosecutors that city officers routinely claimed to be working when alarms showed facilities had long been empty, and regularly claimed to have worked 8.5-hour weekend shifts for jobs that lasted less than half that. Prosecutors also told the Globe about one instance in which a longtime clerk repeatedly forged the signatures of at least 3 different supervisors, helping her collect some $30,000 in fraudulent overtime earnings. And as the Globe said, talk about brazen. And much of this went on at the same time that many state troopers were being prosecuted for very similar offenses. Joining me to talk about all of this are Yawu Miller, senior editor of the Bay State Banner, and Boston City Councilor Lydia Edwards. Councilor Yawu, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Sure, Jim.
Thank you.
Yawu, starting with you, White is fired. Now what?
He's obviously, he said he's going to appeal this, or he's going to, probably most likely file a lawsuit. It's going to drag on a bit, but I think this probably gives acting Mayor Janey the opportunity to install a new, commissioner. So it's kind of a win for her in the short run.
Councilor, did acting Mayor Janey make the right move here?
I think she made one that was based off of the evidence she got to hear, based off her personal experience, and also because of deep concerns of White's past with domestic violence. I think she made the decision that made sense. And I think she also felt that he wasn't formally vetted.
What do you think happens next? Let's leave the potential litigation from White aside for the moment. What do you think happens internally in terms of the police department leadership, Councilor?
Well, I think this is the time for folks we're looking for leadership in the department, honestly. And I think at this time, we need to check in on morale. And we also need to use this as the opportunity that it is. It's time to reform. It's time to change. And I can't think of a better opportunity when you're also looking for leadership to get reform and change.
You know, Yawu, you said a minute ago it gives her the opportunity, meaning Kim Janey, the opportunity to pick a commissioner. Acting Mayor Janey was on her radio show the other day. I asked her 2, maybe 3 times if she believed she had the power to pick a permanent commissioner, because there is some legal dispute. She never answered the question. Should I read into your answer that she does have the power in your estimation and that she'll exercise it?
I think that as far as any of us know, nobody knows absolutely for sure. I mean, the language in the charter is sufficiently vague that, you could make compelling arguments either way. I mean, so I do think that, again, she has the opportunity to do it. It's just a question of, whether anybody pushes back on it.
Councilor, should she pick a permanent replacement? She intimated to us the other day and seemed to sound this afternoon as if she was going to put a pretty thorough process in place. And it sounded to me like the process might even continue post the fall elections.
I think that's the real concern. Leave the permanent, interim, temporary title aside. At the end of the day, the next mayor, whoever that would be, could easily come in and just get another police commissioner. So, as we've seen, the acting mayor can remove somebody. An actual elected mayor can certainly remove somebody. So the issue, whatever title you put on that person, I think they're going to be temporary until we know who the mayor is.
How much are you concerned, Councilor, about this litigation, which is not guaranteed, but I would say likely to be a distraction? I mean, again, hearkening back to our radio show the other day, I assume one of Dennis White's arguments would be due process. At the same time that Acting Mayor Janey said to us she had not made up her mind, she was going to listen to the evidence and the testimony at the hearing she conducted, she also talked in great detail about the process for picking a replacement, again, even though she hadn't said she had made up her mind yet. Are you worried about litigation distracting from the job of whoever sits in Dennis White's chair?
No, I'm not at all worried about it. I mean, litigation happens. We have a legal department.
Well, there's another issue. You're a pretty good lawyer, Lydia Edwards, in addition to being a city councilor. I want to read to you from what Dennis White said at his hearing the other day, and then read you what his lawyer said today after Acting Mayor Janey's decision, and I think you'll pick up a striking similarity. Dennis White said, "I'm a black man who's been accused falsely of crimes, not been given a fair trial. As you know," I'm skipping ahead, "that's a pattern that has been repeated in this country for centuries." And then let me skip down to Nick Carter, his lawyer today, almost the exact same words. "He's a black man falsely accused of crimes, not given a fair trial. This reflects an ugly pattern in our country." Did race, Lydia Edwards, have anything to do with Dennis White's termination?
I don't believe race had anything to do with his termination. I think it was whether he was vetted properly. And I think, honestly, his past has everything to do with whether he was let go. And that's really what I think came down to it. And the question of how much a person's past should impact their ability to be employed by the city of Boston or as police commissioner. That, I think, was what was being weighed. And I think there's a question of whether that was thoroughly weighed and vetted before Acting Mayor Janey took office.
It seems to me that Dennis White and his lawyer do think that race had something to do with it. Yawu, do you?
I don't think so either. I mean, I think it's more about the internal affairs process in the Boston Police Department. I mean, I think for me, if there was one takeaway from the investigation that the city did, it's that the city's, I mean, the police department's own internal affairs investigations are not thorough. They seem like they're more interested in sweeping things under the rug than arriving at any kind of truth. And when it comes to domestic violence or allegations of domestic violence, again, there's a pattern of ignoring serious allegations and not really getting to the root of it.
Well, if I can just add to, I would argue that the investigative body in terms of the Boston Police Department is the Boston Globe, whether it's Patrick Rose and the allegations, the credible allegations of serial molestation, the situation with Dennis White, the overtime story in the newspaper. Yawu, I want to stay with you for a minute. While Councilor Edwards doesn't think that litigation is a distraction, I am guessing the whole issue of who is telling the truth. On one side, Willie Gross and Dennis White himself saying the mayor knew everything. Mayor Walsh knew everything about this. Mayor Walsh saying repeatedly he knew nothing. Commissioner Evans, the later Commissioner Evans, Bill Evans, agreeing with him. Does that go away quickly, or is that going to be with us for a long time?
I think we in the media are going to continue to pay attention to it. We're going to continue to report on that as it. I mean, the police department is under a microscope now for a number of reasons, as are police departments across the country. And a lot of what what they've been telling us over the years. Again, like you said, the Boston Globe is the investigative body of the police department. The media has given us more insight into the police than the police themselves have.
Councilor, if a constituent came up to you tonight after this discussion and said to you, Councilor, I read about the domestic violence allegations against the commissioner for a couple of days that the acting mayor found to be credible. I read about the child molestation allegations against the cop who was allowed to stay on the force for a couple of decades and then rose to be union president. I read in the Boston Globe about whatever it is, a dozen plus people in the evidence unit submitting fraudulent claims for overtime, maybe even tainting other evidence beyond that. I don't trust these people. What do you say to them?
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. I'm sorry is also what I would say. I'm an elected official and I am part of this system and I acknowledge that as well. So I would apologize. I wouldn't blame them for not trusting this. And then I would say my job, as well as acting Mayor Janey's and all of my colleagues on the city council's job, is to help build that trust again. And that literally is going to be us holding them accountable. I'm proud of the work we have done. We've had hearings on overtime. We've had hearings where we removed rubber bullets and tear gas without a warning. We're pushing reforms as currently right now within the Boston Police Department, including even diversifying and making sure that they actually reflect the diversity of the city of Boston. So there are reforms happening now. They may not be as big, but they are happening, and we do hear you. And we understand that if you don't have trust in the Boston police or the police department, then you essentially you're walking away from safety. We were less safe. We are less of a community. And I think we're worse off as a city, but I don't blame them. I don't blame them one bit.
Councilor, ending that conversation with that constituent, if he or she said to you, can you see a day when the police will ever adequately police themselves? Do you? Can you?
I actually think that is not, it shouldn't be the job of the police to police themselves. I actually supported Councilor Campbell's, I think she had an inspector general idea for the city of Boston. I actually support outside and independent investigations coming in to establish trust so that there is no question of the methodology or the allegiances of people. I believe in that. I think that's part of the system. It should be understood as part of the conversation.
And Yawu, you have the final word. Can you imagine a moment when the police adequately polices itself or the city adequately polices the police department?
I have to believe that the city can do a better job and will do a better job eventually. I agree with Lydia that it shouldn't be the police officers themselves who do it. There should be outside audits, and those outside audits should be, there have been outside audits, they should be acted upon. The police have to feel like they're accountable to you and to me, to the people who vote and pay taxes in the city of Boston.
Yawu Miller, Councilor Edwards, thanks so much for your time as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you.